That's you. Yeah.
Yeah. That. How's that? I thought you were saying, am I back? Yes, I'm back. I'm back. How are we doing?
Baruch haba.
Thank you. That's all's good. Baruch Hashem. All right.
Baruch Hashem.
That's good. That's good. Wait a minute, and then we'll get started. Do a little bit of a shorter lesson today. So this week's parsha is Parshat Balak, and as we mentioned in Shul, to properly understand the opening few chapters of this parsha, we have to really take a good hard look at the at the parsha before. The Jewish people leave Egypt in like a spectacular fashion. The whole world knows of these people. They had defeated the world's greatest superpower in a miraculous way with the plagues, etc., and then completely annihilated any of the last vestiges of an army that this nation would have had through the splitting of the sea. And now they are making their way toward the land of Canaan. Now the people in Canaan are trembling and are afraid, as we share in the Azyashir, Namogul Kol Yoshvei Canaan, etc. But there is still a general sense of hope and a sense of security in the fact that Sichon and Og, the two mightiest kings, are standing athwart the Jewish people. They are the sentinels of the land of Canaan. Sichon, the king of the Amoraim, and Og Melech HaBashan. Og, who is a giant left over from the days before the flood. These two are standing and between the Jewish people and the lands of Canaan. So the people in Canaan are kind of still not overwhelmingly afraid, because Sichon and Og, who had tremendous conquerors and had really been absolutely the dominant force in the region, are standing strong. That is until the Jewish people come through. And then very quickly, the Jewish people bulldoze both Sichon and Og. And now the people behind what was Sichon and Og's strongholds are truly, truly afraid. Among them is the king of Moab, a fellow named
Balak.
Balak, who is, his name is on this Torah portion. Right?
Secondary character.
Right. And yet, even though a secondary character, he gets a Torah portion named after him. Fascinating. Moshe and Aaron and Miriam and Abraham, none of them get a Torah portion named after them. But Balak gets a Torah portion. A Torah portion named after him. Interesting thing, if I was Moshe, I would go back to my publicist and say, fired, right? This guy gets a Torah portion, and I can't get a Torah portion.
What am I, tap liver?
Right. It's interesting in general to see who gets. Korach gets a Torah portion. Balak gets a Torah portion. Moshe, Aaron, Miriam, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, they don't get Torah portions. Its own conversation for a different discussion. But Balak now is truly, truly afraid. He is petrified, because now he's seen that nothing works. The most powerful kings, again, the most powerful nation, the Egyptians, they're basically gone. The Jewish people left them utterly vaporized. Sichon and Og, the two most powerful kings, they're gone. And so Balak is thinking, what is it possible that I can do? What possibly can I do in this circumstance to actually bring down these people? Now, here's the thing. There's a truism about Balak that is also true about the Egyptians and is true about numerous of those, including, by the way, Sichon and Og, which is their hatred is their own downfall. Give me one moment. Give me one brief moment here. All right, I'm back. Sorry, we have a
you plus one.
guy.
You plus one.
Right, little guy is going to help me in teaching the class. Okay.
Good.
I bet he could.
Okay, Zalman, we're going to do this together. So we're saying, Sichon, Og, Egypt, now Balak and Moab, their hatred is what brought their own downfall. Because the Jewish people were demonstrably not a threat to them. Not only could they have potentially not been a threat, they were demonstrably. In other words, all evidence was pointing in the direction that they don't have what to be afraid about the Jewish people.
I'm surprised to hear you say this about Moab, because look what just happened. You just explained what just happened, and
1 minute. So we have to get there first.
Okay.
So let's start with the Egyptians. The Jewish people wanted to live peacefully, calmly in the land of Goshen, not bothering anybody, right? Paro decides, and he uses a word, and this is kind of what it says, vayakutsu, right? Vayikatz, and they became disgusted with the Jewish people. That this was his motivation. It was a hatred. It was an anti-Semitism. Then he riles up the people and says, these people are it's a burgeoning population happening within our midst. And what's going to happen if another nation comes and attacks, and these people are going to join them in alliance against us? No indication, in fact, that the Jewish people wouldn't be anything but patriotic to their host nation, showing a sense of gratitude to the people of Egypt for allowing them to be guests within their midst. In fact, the way that Paro strategizes to subdue them is to play on the inherent patriotism that he knows the Jewish people have, because how do you take an entire population of free people and all of a sudden force them into slavery? He begins a national project, the building of the two cities of Pitom and Ramses, and he asks everybody to join in and help in this project. Who are the first people in line to participate in building? The Jewish people. And he knows this. Very quickly, he moves, everybody else kind of slips away, and the Jewish people are left as the only ones still building, and all of a sudden there's taskmasters above them, and like quicksand. This is why God comes to visit Moshe in a burning thorn bush. Very easy to get your hand in, very hard to get your hand back out. We slipped in, and it was very hard to get them later removed. So with Egypt, we see there was no threat. The Jewish people posed no threat. They chose to see the Jewish people as a threat. Same thing with Sichon, Og, and Moab. The Jewish people, to each one of them, to Sichon and Og, we have it spelled out in the Torah, but the same paradigm applies to Moab. It just didn't get a chance to happen yet. What do the Jewish people tell the kings of Sichon and Og? The kings Sichon and Og about their designs on their land.
We just want to go through.
Exactly. As we mentioned this past Shabbos, we just want to go down that road in Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. Right? We want to go B'derech HaMelech. We want to just go down the King's Highway. Right? And that's actually where the term comes from. What is the King's Highway? Back in the day, there was always one major road that traversed the entire, right, a thoroughfare that traversed the country from end to end. And the Jewish people were saying, we're going to just stay on the road. We're not going to deviate. We have no interest in conquering your land. We need to just pass through to get to our final destination. Sichon and Og decided to come out and greet the Jewish people in battle. And it did not end well for them. Moab was also not on the eastern bank, or rather on the western bank of the Jordan River. The land of Moab was on the eastern bank of the Jordan River. The Jewish people had no interest in the land of Moab, as they had no interest in the lands of Sichon and Og. And yet, the same word is in the beginning of this week's Parsha, the word that we are familiar with from the Egyptians. Vayakutsu, and they were disgusted with the Jewish people. It was an animosity. And that is often done, part of, in a sense, when you're driven by that kind of senseless animosity, it doesn't end well. Obviously, especially when you're picking a fight with God's chosen people. So, Balak decides that no matter what the precedent is with the Jewish people saying, we're not headed for you. We don't want to do battle with you. We have no interest in these lands. We want to get to our promised land, the land that God promised our forefather Abraham, and we just want safe passage through, which would have been an easy solution. Just let the people come through. You're cowed from their threat. Fine, just let them pass through. But no, instead he's got to figure out a way to do war with them. Give me one moment. Hello? No, I'm just getting class. Thank you. All right, bye.
Was that Balaam?
No, that was my Eshes Chayil. I bless everybody that she's informing me, even as she's running camp and doing a million things, that she made a delicious coffee for herself in the shul. She ran out to the water park trip that she's taking the kids on, and she's informing me that I should go and grab it because it's a good one and it's just going to sit there going to waste. So she
very sweet.
Let me know that there's a coffee. Either way, back to.
I don't get it. I don't get it. Did I miss in the text where there was this negotiation between?
No, as I said, the Moabites didn't even give a chance for it to happen. They went on the aggression.
But I think what's unique to me about this portion is it's the first parsha where we don't have the Israelite point of view. We've got the foreigner's point of view. And in the foreigners, go ahead.
I was going there. I was heading there. I was about to say. So we have this moment brewing. I was about to say exactly what you just said. What is fascinating about this Torah portion? It is the only one that is not delivered from the perspective of the main characters. Every other Torah portion, from the beginning to the end, whoever we peg as the main characters, the main actors, starting with Adam, then Noach, right? Then Avraham, then Avraham's kin, and then the Jewish people. Every last Torah portion, from the beginning to end, always is said from their perspective, right? Not necessarily the first person, you're kind of looking over their shoulder, but everything that occurs is occurred through the lens of them. They're in the center. They're in the center frame, right?
Right.
Not this parsha.
Right.
This parsha, until the very end, the Jewish people play no role whatsoever, except for being almost just in the background. The parsha is told from the end of Balak and Bilam, and really the Jewish people. If you were sitting there, like, and you were going back to the publicist, and the publicist comes back to you and says, "Great news! Well, good news and bad news." Okay, start with the good news. Good news, I landed you a role of the Jewish people in the Bible. Oh, right, that's central. What's the bad news? It's Parshas Balak.
It's Balak.
Then really for 90% of the parsha you have no speaking role whatsoever. You don't really exist. You exist on the extreme periphery of the story, which is very unique. As I said, the only Torah portion in the entire Torah where the main characters of the narrative are really, in this episode, are completely on the periphery. So, but to your point, Paula, Hashem's command about what to do to the Moabites and the Midianites only comes in response. The fact that God commands us to get aggressive with them is only in response to what they preemptively did in this week's Torah portion. Had they otherwise been hands off, then the Jewish people would have offered them the same deal they offered every single nation that was in between them and the land of Canaan. We have nothing, we have no bone to pick with you, we want to pass through your lands. That's it. They didn't, with Moab, they didn't even get, and Midian, they didn't even get a chance because Moab and Midian went on the immediate aggressive. You understand?
Yeah, if you look at the end of the parsha, it's absolutely true with this enticement
but even no, I'm saying this. They hired Bilam to bring about. So 1 second, let's not skip to the end.
Okay, I'll stop.
Let's back up to the beginning. So what happened? So you have Balak, the king of Moab, who decides that the Jewish people are a threat simply because they're the Jewish people. Unfortunately, a very familiar story.
It still is.
Still is, yes. And so he starts ticking his check boxes. He says, physical war, military, just basic military strategy is out. Our armies are nowhere near as strong as those of the Egyptians, those of the Amorites, or those of the Bashanites of the Sichon and Og's nations. We're not going to win militarily. So he thinks outside the box, Balak, and he says, I'm going to wage spiritual warfare against these people. I am going to hire. There's a fellow, if you look him up in the white paper, yellow pages. It's a professional curse monger. Professional curse monger. A prophet who, in theory, made also a choice. God bestowed upon him because, as we say, zel umat zeh asalukim. That God always has to provide a counterbalance. If God was going to provide the Jewish people with a prophet as great as Moshe, then, in fairness, he has to offer the nations also such a prophet. So they can certainly turn around and say, oh, if we just had a prophet as great as Moshe, we'd also be a chosen people. We'd also be a great and devoted people. To which God is able to say, I did. His name was Bilam. Bilam also talks to God on the regular. Bilam chooses to use his talent for prophecy, however, in the most destructive type of way. Bilam is able to divine in the various moments when the nature of God tilts towards judgment. We know there are multiple character traits that God has and cycles through, actually. If you're it cycles through throughout the day. It's fascinating. It's one of the reasons that we do not drink wine or red wine on Friday nights when we make Kiddush between the 6th and 7th hour. We actually hold off on Kiddush. We don't make Kiddush. If we have to make Kiddush, we don't do it on red wine. because that is Mazel Ma'adim.
Oh yeah. Oh
There
yeah.
is the idea that that is actually that hour in the day is the attribute of Mars, which is blood, and
Right.
you don't want to invoke blood in this moment. Also, Wednesdays is considered associated with that same thing with Mazel Madim. Is a fascinating bit of Talmud that says that if somebody is born on Wednesday, their profession, they will tilt towards a profession of blood. So it doesn't mean bad necessarily. It means it can either become a mohel, a shochet, or something more violent and negative by nature. But there are these elements. Bilam, as a prophet, was able to divine, no pun intended,
That
choose
moment.
the exact times that God is sitting on his throne of judgment.
Right.
And when God's on his throne of judgment, it doesn't take much to trigger consequence. And so Bilam was particularly adept at divining those moments, cursing out a people, and bringing about a wholesale downfall to an entire nation. So, yeah, his profession. Everybody's got to earn a living somehow, right? So this is his 9 to 5. It's got a pretty decent 401k. So Balak, knowing this, chooses that this is going to be his approach. And he goes to hire Bilam. He sends a retinue of nobles from Moab and from the sister nation of Midian. So the nobles of both Moab and Midian come to Bilam to ask him to consider this different direction in bringing down the Jewish people. What transpires is a very important lesson to all of us. Bilam welcomes this guest and says, "Let me consider it." Bilam by nature is an incredibly arrogant, indulgent person. We know this throughout the entire story. He wants to do this because this will burnish his credentials, and because he wants to bring down the Jewish people. Because there's an old, everybody wants the old negative nature among people. It's been identified throughout history that when somebody's riding high, then it is a very negative aspect of our nature, though, that we human beings want to cut down whoever is that's riding high. Even I'm not going to gain from it personally, but I just want to cut that person down. Right? If somebody else is riding high, I cannot tolerate it. The more arrogant a person is, the more they cannot tolerate that somebody else is getting the glory, somebody else has all the attention, infamy, whatever it is. And so Bilam cannot abide by the clearly powerful place that the Jewish people are in. And so all he did was this excuse, and now he's more than happy to take on this contract. And yet he knows that he's a prophet, let's not forget, and he knows that these people are in the good graces of God. So he's a little hesitant. Every part in him screams about wanting to do this, but he says, I need to test a little bit the waters behind the scenes here and see if I have some way to get this done. So God comes to him in a dream, as Bilam was expecting, and God says to him, Bilam, don't engage. Don't do this. This is not going to end well. These are people that I love. I care deeply about. They're my favorite nation, and messing with them is not going to end well for you. That should have been the moment that Bilam says, "Oh, well, okay, I hear," and told the messengers that, sorry, it's just not in the cards. No, Bilam starts negotiating with God. Right, something that any parent is familiar with. Right, you tell your kid this is not a good idea, and instead of paying heed, they start negotiating. Right? No, but really, look, Balak sent this whole retinue. Are the people really deserving of your protection? Maybe they will. They're not so wonderful, etc., etc. Maybe I can overpower their connection with you and the connection I will establish. All the different shtick. To which God says, like many parents do, you want to insist on this? Go ahead and let's see how it ends. Again, should have been the moment that Bilam heeds the warning and advice, but his ego, his arrogance, and his lust for the honor and the wealth that Balak is going to bestow upon him doesn't allow him to see reason. And so he wakes up early the next day, and he is so eager to go that he saddles his own donkey. Does this at all sound familiar? Waking up early to saddle a donkey.
Lech lecha. Take your son, your only son. They get up early in the morning. Vayashkim baboker. That's it.
Yes. Another
Avraham.
Very good. Avraham.
Avinu.
When Hashem asks him to pay the ultimate sacrifice, the exact opposite, literally the exact opposite. Here God is warning Bilam not to do this, and Bilam says, "But I want to. This is an indulgence for my ego, for my honor, for whatever it is, my legacy." Avram was asked the exact opposite: "Give up everything that you hold dear for my sake." Avram gets up early, and Bilam gets up. We build this into our prayer. There's a not a prayer so much, but there's a piyut that gets said by many as they arrive at the Beit Midrash before they start learning.
What about Moshiach?
One second. Hold that thought. But no, we say not part of the davening. It's a special prayer for entering the Beit Midrash, and it has the following rule: Anu mashkimin vehim mashkim. We arise early, and they arise early. Anu mashkimin l'divrei Torah vehim mashkim l'dvarim b'telem. We arise to study your God, to get connected with you, and they get up early for naught. For pursuits of naught. And we're going to see it continues, and then it continues, Anu ratzim v'heim ratzim. We run and they run. And basically this back and forth, this contrast of what we are doing in the service of God and what they are doing, and on the surface we're doing the same thing for completely different purposes. The same effort is expended. They expend effort, we expend effort. We wake up early, they wake up early. We run, they run. But for the goal of it is what's completely different. But so he wakes up early, he saddles his donkey, heads out on his way with the retinue heading behind him. He's riding his trusty donkey. This donkey has been with him for forever. And all of a sudden, the donkey becomes less than trustworthy. The next thing he knows, all of a sudden, the donkey is veering right off the road. What's going on? What's wrong with my donkey? And he tries to veer the donkey back on course, and they come to a place where the road is now flanked by stone walls. This is all directly in the Torah. This is not even in the Midrash. This is in the Torah. And all of a sudden, his donkey veers off again. This time, it can't veer off the road because there's the wall, but veers up right against the walls and crushes Bilam's leg against the wall. And Bilam was like, "What is going on here?" And he forces the donkey back, and then they enter into a bottleneck. There's no room to veer right or left whatsoever. And instead of the donkey being forced to continue forward, the donkey just collapses under him and refuses to budge. And he is beating the donkey, beating this donkey. Vayiftach Hashem et pi ha'ason, and God opens up the mouth of the donkey, and the donkey says to Bilam, why are you beating me? Literally, he turns to Bilam, turns his head to Bilam and says, why are you beating me? At which point Bilam screams in fright, jumps off the donkey and runs for his life. No, Bilam takes this all in stride. His donkey is now talking to him. And so he starts arguing with the donkey. He says, why am I beating you? I'm beating you because I'm trying to move you forward and you keep on veering off the path. What's wrong with you? And the donkey turns to him and says, have I ever been less than faithful to you, less than trustworthy? No, you haven't. Says, then can't you understand that there is a reason that I am veering off the path? Or do you not see the angel of God standing right in front of us with a naked sword drawn? And Bilam picks up his eyes and says, oh, there is. Sees the angel of God standing, the one that the donkey has seen already 3 times. And Bilam did not. Right there, that was already a very important life lesson. If you had to ask anybody, what is the most stubborn animal? What would you answer?
A donkey.
Wrong, a human.
Oh, a human.
But thank you for setting me up, Diane. That's exactly right. Right? It's in the vernacular. Stubborn donkey or stubborn mule, which is half mule, half donkey, half horse. A donkey is the icon of a stubborn animal, and yet this donkey understands to turn back. Even the donkey gets it. There's only one animal more stubborn than the donkey.
Human.
And that is a human being. Our intellect, our massive brain compared to any other animal, our ability to be self-aware in a way that an animal cannot be, makes us by far the greatest of all of God's creatures. And also can make us the most lowly and stubborn and obnoxious of all of God's creatures. God told Bilam, turn around. An angel of God is standing there and telling you, turn around. And Bilam doesn't see anything. The donkey sees it, for God's sake, and you don't. Now, we can laugh at Bilam all we want, but how many times is it that we get ourselves into a circumstance where we know going into it, this will not end, and yet we convince ourselves that it's going to be okay purely because we want it to be, because our own desires, our own indulgences, or what have you, ego, our baser instincts are telling us, ignore the obvious warning signs, the red flags, and push forward because I want you to. This is a very important lesson. We would like to all believe that we would, make the right decision. In an example this starts where God himself comes. But God himself does come to us in the Torah, right? God gave us a Torah. We still have the Torah today, telling us what is the path forward to a life of meaning, a life of purpose, a life of blessing, etc., etc. And oftentimes we know what the Torah says, and we know that what we're about to do is to deviate from that. And we also know deep down that it's not going to end well, and we still do it anyway. We are being more stubborn than the donkey. And that is something we have to be aware of. No, it doesn't mean that overnight we will all of a sudden become perfect about it, but this parsha is making an important point. It's not by accident that we're getting all the details of this story, because as laughable as it is, it's making something lesson. And more importantly than that, even the donkey within us is talking back to us and saying, don't do this, right? sometimes even that part within us that is the animal within us, even that part is telling us this is not in your best interest. And it's really that self-destructive part of us that still pushes. And you would think with all these elements within you, your common sense, and even your self-preservation and everything, and don't forget your holy side, all turning to you and telling you this is a bad idea. And you're still insisting on moving forward. Anu ratzim v'him ratzim, right? That's a continuation of the thing. We run in pursuit of Torah, and there's other pursuits where it's a pursuit where you're running headlong, even if it makes no sense, even if it will not yield the results you need it to. The end of the story is that obviously we know that Bilam comes, and instead of curses come blessings, not just any blessings, some of the most beautiful blessings that have ever been given to the Jewish people are given by Bilam, because it's really God talking through Bilam, right? Including one of the most famous, which is
Matov.
Matovu Aholach Yaakov. 3 times Bilam, again, this is another indication of his incredible stubbornness. He gets up there after he's got all these signs that it's not going to end well, and then he actually has empirical evidence that it's not going to end well because it's not ending well for him, right? And he tries to curse the people, and out come up blessings. So you would say at that point, he should turn to Balak and say, it's not going to happen. No, he says, let me try again. Right? Literally the definition of insanity. And he tries to go to a different place. I'm going to see less of the people. Maybe their presence will be less overwhelming. And I'll be able to overpower their presence and continue to curse them. Nope. Does not end well a second time. Third time, take a hint, Bilam. Right? No. At this point, when you get into that state, at this point, you're just too committed, right? Everything else goes out of your mind, and you're just, at that point, it's just pure obnoxiousness that you're running on, right? And he goes up to the hill, and now he's got a good look at some of the people, and he sees something that even he has to admit is a beautiful sight. He sees that the Jewish people are deserving of God's blessing. This is what the thing he was hoping for. He's hoping for that maybe they don't really deserve it. God is he's in a good mood about them, right? God has, for whatever reason, likes them. So if he can push hard enough, maybe he can change God's mind. But then he sees something that shows him that the people have also earned God's favor. He's not looking at the tent of Moshe. He's not looking at the tent of Aaron. He's looking at the tent of the average Jewish citizen. And what does he notice about their tents? He notices that the entrance of each tent is facing away from the other.
That's tzniut.
Tzniut, modesty. Look, a tent is a one-room apartment, right? You open up the flap of a tent, you're looking straight into the bedroom. And the Jewish people are taken care of. You can imagine there's at least 600,000 tents. Yet they're taking care that the door of each tent should not be facing each other, giving each one modesty. Says, gotta admit, that's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing. And so his own sentiments get mixed into God's words, and out comes the Matovu Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael. How beautiful are your tents, O Israel, your dwelling places. How beautiful are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel. But this is not it. Not the end of the lesson, because now Balak is furious. We can imagine. Right. He is absolutely, instead of putting out the fire, Bilam has poured on kerosene, then gasoline, and then napalm, right, on this fire. And at this point, Balak is apoplectic. He says, I wanted to give you honor. I wanted to give you glory. I wanted to reward you and make you wealthy. And God, what a kind of shlamazel are you? And not only kind of shlamazel, but you ruined everything. You ruined everything. And he pounds on Bilam and he says, run before worse happens to you. And now Bilam says, before I go, one last thing to say. And he says, till now I've been talking about the present. Let me tell you about the future. And opens up, and here we have the most comprehensive prophecy in the 5 books of the Torah on Mashiach. The Rambam enumerates it, elucidates the details. Bilam talks about 2 kings. He says, I see it and it's not close, and I gaze upon it, but it's not near. There will arise a star among Jacob and a staff among Israel, and the constant repetition, referring to a king and then another king. To borrow a turn of phrase, a once and future king. And he is talking about King David and the descendant of King David, Mashiach. And as Les mentioned, there's that reference again. There is that reference to the donkey, right? Mashiach will be coming on a donkey. So what do we make of all this? And the answer is, don't walk away from this lesson, from this parsha, assuming that, in a sense, logic is the only way to handle yourself. And that Bilam doing the illogical, being stubborn, is never the right thing to do. In other words, that pragmatism is always the way to go. No. A donkey, the stubbornness of a donkey, is a necessary vehicle. Not only a necessary vehicle, but a necessary vehicle to the most important thing, to the goal of all of this, that is Mashiach. There is logic, there is understanding, and then there's beyond logic and understanding. Diane set it up, right? She said the little piece about how the brain stops, right, for love. We have, as Jews, the awareness that while we define our reality 95% of the time with logic, and that if something is logical, then it's right and correct. And if something is illogical, then it's not right, it's not correct, and it's not real. Yes, but there is a crucial 5% where logic is not the correct tool in the toolbox, where logic has to get out of the driver's seat and let something else drive. And in terms of our conversation, it's faith.
Exactly.
Faith is not a cop-out.
Right.
Faith isn't what happens when I can't muster up enough logic, so I fall back on faith, and faith is for those that are not intellectually superior, right? As you unfortunately hear too many people say, right? No. Faith is an incredible, powerful tool. Faith is not illogical. Faith is supra-logical. Where logic fails, where logic cannot reach, because logic is limited to the expanse of your brain. And we know that there is something beyond the expanse of my brain. There's something infinite in the world. God is infinite. It is illogical to assume that I will be able to fully encompass God with my brain. I have another tool in my toolbox, and it's called emunah. Just like, by the way, I also put my logic in the passenger seat for another important thing, for love. Right? if ever your children sit down and they're like, Mom, Dad, how did you know? Right? How did you know that the two of you, like how that was a, if you begin your answer while your spouse is sitting there next to you and you begin to, oh, well, it was logical, right? You're sleeping on the couch that night. How dare you reduce something as powerful and as expansive and as deep as love to simple logic? Now, it doesn't mean that logic can't agree with it, but logic is not the foundation. Logic is not the foundation of the connection you have with your bashert, and logic is not the foundation of the relationship you have with God. So after having said that there are tremendous pitfalls when everything is telling you this is the wrong path and your innate stubbornness is going to get you in trouble, that is true. And that is an important lesson to learn. Simultaneously, it's also important to know that there are times where your commitment to what you believe over that which you know is also what gets you to the finish line, to the end game of Bilam's prophecy, the coming of Mashiach, who will ride also on a donkey. All right, everybody?
Beautiful. Just beautiful.
Amazing.
Oh, Rabbi,
Thank
just
you,
one more
Rabbi.
thing.
Yes.
Your Dvar Torah on Shabbat, this past Shabbat. Oh my God, it was magnificent.
It reached
Thank
all the
you.
way to California.
It was. I don't think anybody else in Montgomery County could ever say that, or would ever say that, is what I mean. Of course they could, but they won't. And you did, and God, you're good.
Thank you. But more importantly, it's about making sure that we heed the message. We do something about it.
Yes. Yes.
My rabbi gave a really good Dvar Torah. My rabbi gives the best.
I thought mine did. And I even told Jerry. He missed a good one.
Bottom line is, we should always be inspired, and may the rabbis give good speeches, and may the congregation not fall asleep during.
And you're outside.
Rabbi, from now on, you have to get somebody like the Rebbe had, where they would sit on Saturday night and write down everything that he said on Shabbat.
Well, apparently, I hear Diane did that. So, all right.
Shabbat shalom.
Bye.
Shabbat
Shabbat
shalom,
shalom.
Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Rabbi.
All the very best. Shabbos.
Bye-bye.